Okay, everybody, this is part two of the session for March 28th, last Thursday night. And as you recall, we worked through chapter 16. And in chapter 16, we worked with cross joins, self joins, and crosstabs queries. And all of this was to enable us to begin to fill out that analytic cube that we talked about at the start of the course. And just go back to show you here, and I'll do a quick search here. Here it is, the analytical cube. And as you could notice, you could see that we have retailers, that's a dimension, the product, which is another dimension, time, which is another dimension, and then we had and then we had various measures or values in terms of revenue, total revenue, the revenue per outlet, the revenue for each type of product, and certainly also units. So we've literally been building up to this point of building this analytical cube, so then we can do the slice and dicing, and we can start to go back in and extract data looking for patterns. And as I spoke Thursday night, also there's the issue of query discipline, and that is a report calendar which says here's the information we're going to look for every day of the week, of the work week, and then quarterly things, weekly reports, semi-annual reports, monthly reports, annual reports, tri-year reports, building all of that out so that there's an overall discipline in how you utilize the database. Then providing some time for more serendipitous searching, but all the while we're looking for patterns of information, okay? And again, and as I've spoken about in other courses you've had with me, then we talk about how do I visualize that information. We did that in Business 1123, trying to emphasize to you that we create, when we extract the data, we try to put it into a form that is easily understood, and that is some kind of chart, a table, a pie chart, whatever. And that is why in the business problem analysis course, I put you through the gold standard on how to put a chart together, what to look for, the common errors that are there, or if someone's fudging the data, etc. Okay? And all of this is stringing these tables of data together that allow us to see patterns. And all of this stuff that you hear out there about big data really boils down to two processes. First of all, capturing that data. And number two, taking that data and rendering it into a format that we can see and we can use. First of all, in its rawest form is going to be a table. In its rawest form is going to be a result set or a view, and then some visualization that shows you that data. And let me show you for example. I want to go over here for just a second and take a little bit of time. So I'm going to go over and take a look at here. This is an article I was looking at last night, which I thought was just absolutely fascinating. This is the New York Times. And we'll pop in there. And I want to show you what they did here. And it was this one was the this is one where they were talking about the 737, and here it is. Now, this report is a fantastic example of how you can take data from a database, process it, work with it, and then visualize it. Now, what we're going to see here is a visualization, but it's based on the data from the black boxes of both of those planes and some similar patterns. And it talks about this system that was designed to keep the 737 at the right angle of attack. As they show you here, an airplane when it's flying has to have its nose up within a certain degree in order for it to continue through the air. Because remember, air is dense. It's like going through an ocean. At the same time, okay, they can't have the nose up too high or it will stall. And they show you this. Okay? And here they show the attack angle. You can't get something like this where you and I and the general public can really see it and understand it, much less the experts, unless you use database technology. Okay? And the database, the raw data were in the flight recorder, and they had to be pulled up here. And understand, I show you this example to show you that here's a way that we can use a database and then take and extract the data from it, okay, and put it into a visualization. So over in chapter 17, when we talk about tables in a production database, we're talking about this thing I've said before about leveraging the law of large numbers. Okay, we'll scroll on down here. And notice they show you that the risk of a stall is if it's too steep. Okay. And so they had this automated system that uses stabilizers to push the nose down. And this is what happened. And the pilots got into a battle with this system. And the system eventually is going to win. It's going to put the nose of that plane headed down because it believes the system, which is just an automated system, believes the plane is about to go too high of an attack angle and stall. But all they really had to do was to simply turn the system off. In fact, the plane that crashed the day before, there was a gentleman who was a pilot who was on a deadhead. That is, he was flying along, had been through the training, and had been forced to memorize in his training all the things that can go wrong with this new system. And like with many systems, sometimes the best thing to do is just shut it off. Okay, and he did that on that flight, and it saved those people from having a crash. Well, he wasn't there the next day, and whoever flew that plane who was with him didn't report what he did, so they didn't file a complete report. Okay, so it cost them the lives of all of those people because all he did was told, turn that system off. As the New York Times is saying here again, they also relied on only one sensor. And so they're going to insert a sensor on the other side of the plane and develop software that will handle situations where one side of the plane says we're at an angle of 8%, where the other says we're at an angle of 2%. Okay? And what human interventions can occur. So, and again, this is not to criticize anybody at the company that made this plane. No way. modern air travel is miraculous. It's a great gift from God. And the people who put these systems together are exceptionally intelligent and courageous people. They know and they do everything they can to ensure airline safety. But we live in a fallen world and bad things happen because there are mistakes made, or systems fail, or there's some nefarious activity that takes down an airliner. Okay? So as they show us here, this, and again, this I thought, boy, this really does say, because how would they know? Well, number one, they know there was only one sensor in this plane, but they went back to the black box. The black box, the recorder, and has recording of the conversations in the cockpit. It has a recording of all of the systems. It's a database, and it allows folks to piece together what happened. We'll go on along here, and as I mentioned, they had a real reading and then a false reading. Okay, and note that we've had these the awful reality of these two flights, but out of that will come some information that helps understand, as it appears at this time. That's why the whole fleet of 737s is grounded, because the similarities are just too much alike. And this, of course, shows you how the automated system. Now, when you see this airplane tilt, in reality versus the false reading, that also is the use of database technology. Those are that is essentially a slideshow attached to some of this narrative. We're looking at a very sophisticated version of PowerPoint, and to have that picture and to show the reality versus the false reading, and to show you the motion of that plane is, again, that's not possible without a database that's embedded in some kind of web design or digital display tool. But it's a fantastic. You can see that you see the reality, the false reading versus reality. And as they were talking about, they were trying to go through struggling through a technical manual. And notice this is what happened as they explain why this tug of war occurred on the plane. And of course, they show you the end results. And they provide some narrative. But this is, let me say this is an exceptionally tragic situation. And there's no way that I show this to you in any gratuitous form. This is a horrific tragedy. But as I've said before, people who work in business have immense power, more power than they often realize, and they can have some incredible impacts. And I'm certain the people at Boeing are very sorrowful people because of all of this that's happened, and the grief that's here is just unimaginable. But this is an excellent illustration of why we have you take a course like this, so you can understand this process whereby we gather data and we look at systems and we try to assess it and we try to visualize what's there. So as we move here into chapter 17, where we look at production databases, we're going to find that we're engaged in almost a similar process. Okay, now we'll go down here to the module, and of course, week 8, and now we'll be starting week 9 next week. And as always, we've been working ahead, okay? And so we've worked on lunches database 16 yesterday and Thursday, excuse me. And today we're looking at the production database. So you should have your book open over to chapter 17, and that's over on page 655. And on the left-hand side, okay, is the outline of the chapter. And I think it bears taking a look at what the authors are conveying there. And in that first part of chapter 1, 17, 1, 2, and 3, they talk about joining three tables or several tables at once. And again, joining the 3 tables in a series of steps, and then joining 3 tables using the where clause. That's where something equals something, or something is greater than something, or something is like something. Typically, it's going to be like. That's how we combine the tables. Or you can have almost any one of those Boolean operators in play. And then also where we use the from clause. But notice we're joining several tables together, okay? And when we do that, we create a production, create a production database. We're linking tables together, we're building a big set of information, and then we're going to run queries and we're going to look for patterns. Or we're going to extract records that provide us a series of facts. We got a prelude to this yesterday, a Thursday night, excuse me, when we ran a query that allowed us to show a sequence of events. Okay? Well, we're going to see the same thing, but this is going to be transactions, and hence the word production. We create a database using data, okay, stored in tables. We query the data. We extract it out of the tables. So that process is a process where we're producing information. And that's data that I can use to make a decision. Okay? So we're over here in chapter 17, and now we're at the point where we're back at what you experience all the time. See, we've come full circle. We've started with you and your experience with databases, and you have experiences with them all the time. You make a choice on your Apple to listen to certain music, or you tune in on a channel, or if you're in your car and you have, say, maybe you've got Sirius, you choose which channel you want to look at, or you go to Banner and you look at your schedule. You go to Google, you do a search, you go to Amazon, you buy books. Almost every facet of your life, in one way or the other, is touched by or deals with a production database. And so we've come full circle to that point where we're getting that production and it occurs. Okay. Well, we're going to look at this. So we're going to have, as usual, we're going to, well, before we do LD 17, okay, I also want to harken back to some of our earlier work, okay, and we're going to look at the data warehouse concept. So I'm going to control search here. Here we are. This was this interesting flow, and I think I really have brought home to you the uses of databases. And here's, of course, that short little vignette on the day in the life of big data. Here it is, a data warehouse, data flows, and data mix. And we'll go out and we'll take a look at that resource out there on the internet. And as you can see, notice that we have enterprise resource programming. These are all kinds of things that occur at a company level, systems that feed into reports about that. An enterprise reporting system would be a production database that tells us, you know, how many people were at work for the week. Would tell us how much stuff did we produce this week. Then we come down to financial data, and notice that as they come through the data warehouse, all right, then they come out in the ERP comes out as a solid product. The financial comes out of a solid product. Then we go down to customer relationship management. How many people called us this week and had a complaint or had a shout out? How many negative comments were on Facebook about our product, on and on. And you can see that feeds into the CRM, okay? And then we finally have the executive level or the external, we have the external level data. And notice that each of these have a particular color, and look what happens. We have 4 reports, 4 specialized reports that we get from the production database, and then we have that one cluster looking. It almost looks like a Rubik's Cube. It's the analytical cube that we've talked about before, and that combines all of this to give us a very holistic picture of the company. Well, I wanted to share that with you so we could try to drive home again this whole idea of the production database. Now, when we were working with the first few weeks, you remember we had those access workshops 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we worked with the Northwind Traders database. Okay, so I'm going to go back down here for just a minute and head over to week 1, and we talked about the data warehouse architecture and its concepts. And this is a PowerPoint, and it's a long thing. And this is from over at the University of Colorado, their business school. And the whole thing is designed to walk us through how we put together a database and its architecture. It's excellent. Then we talked about information design options. Notice what I've got here for you. I'm going to pop it up here for full view for just a second. You can see that I have temporal across the horizontal axis here at the top. I've got when, where, what, how, with whom, those kinds of dimensions, and the types of data that they create. And then we look at suppliers, operators, users, all of our constituents, key constituents. And notice that I have it also then sliced out in terms of one-time, sporadic, periodic, and continuous. Okay, and I'll show you where it's adopted from. So production database implies implies what we're talking about. What has been produced and how are we documenting it? We'll go back here for a moment. And we'll go down to module 1. And so as you can see, we've come full circle. And back here to module number 1. It's going to be a lot easier if I just close off this welcome module. So I'm going to do that. And here's Northwind Traders. Okay. Now remember, we went through this database. We took a tour of it, how it's all put together. And we're going to download that, take a look at it for a second, and reviewed about, we've gone through everything, how tables are made, the questions of referential integrity, using queries, stringing them together. We talked about a view versus a table, the differences between all that. And here we open it up, and we're going to go ahead and I'll enable the content. Notice, here's the dashboard for Northwind Traders, and now you understand what we mean by dashboard. Okay, this is a pretty simplistic example of a dashboard, but think for a moment about what this when you open this up, think about what you're looking at. Do I have any active orders? Okay. Do I need to order any inventory? Do I have any inventory that needs to be ordered? And then I have quick links over to view the inventory, orders, customers, purchase orders, suppliers, employees, shippers, and sales reports. This dashboard tells me what I need to know. What's happening right now, real time, in terms of orders I've got out there. What do I need to do to prevent any problems like reorder inventory? And then what's the status of everything in terms of inventory, orders, customers, purchase orders, suppliers, etc. This area here with the quick links is probably going to be more about dealing with ongoing questions that someone poses to me, or myself just simply monitoring it. And then as we close that off, then we started to look at the tables and then the queries and the reports that were generated. And we started to see how these tables, okay, we had tables of dimension tables and tables of constants. We had tables of orders, etc. And then we started to run, and we had forms to input that data, talked about that. And so now we're at the point where we're ready to export some data. And here we are at the fact sales export. And this is Access Workshop number 2, and we're going to download it. And what we did is we took the results of a query from that database and we exported it to Excel. Why? 2 reasons. First of all, it's going to be computationally much easier to handle that table in an application designed to do computation than to do it in Access. Access is designed to be a database. And when you go to work for a company and you have a dashboard, it's going to be drawing on tables on its databases. Then it's going to have some type of computational capability. And as I've mentioned, by the time you're through here, you'll look at SAS, Visual Analytics, SAP, Oracle, Access, Workshop, Access, Excel. So we've got that data, the export. Now, in a dashboard product, the exportation of the data from the table already occurs. That's why I showed you that little crude dashboard back there just a while ago, so that you could see what it's all about. Now, when you have a product, whatever product you may use at work, it's going to pull data from the table. It's going to put it into an application in your dashboard that will allow you to do computations. Number two, just simply look at the data. And number three, give you an opportunity to put the data into a visual form. Now, the best product that's out there in my mind would be SAS Visual Analytics, because you can very easily produce all kinds of reports with it, and embedded in the report data, embedded in very easily created visualization tools. Okay, so we've got this Excel file. Let's take a look at it here. Okay, and we'll enable the editing on this. And now I have the sales data by the date, the customer ID. Remember, they had a particular channel ID, particular marketing channels, the product ID, the sales type, the unit price, the line cost, the order number. We have just about everything we would want to do. Right now, we have some options I could, if I chose, depending upon the sophistication of the whatever product my company uses. If it uses a product, you may go to work for a small company and says, well, go into, here's our database, here's how to get in, pull out the data and put it in an Excel file and tell me what you see, what you get. Well, we could do that. And we have a pretty powerful tool in Excel. It's called pivot tables. And the reason I blew off the part of Chapter 16 dealing with crosstab queries in Access is there's no point. It's too cumbersome. It's too bulky. The pivot table in Excel is an exceptionally powerful tool that lets me really take that analytical cube and mix and dice it. So I'm going to show you again, okay? And I'm going to have I have a sense of these data, and I know I've got them all the way from A1 down to I-36, it looks like. So I'm going to click Insert Data Table, and I'm going to put in the table range, and it's going to be fact sales. And I'll put in the name of the worksheet, fact sales, and then I put an exclamation point to indicate it's within this worksheet, and that it is it's a worksheet within this workbook. And I'm gonna get make an absolute reference, A1, a $1, $1, and then the colon, and not a semicolon, but the colon. And then I'm going to have $, I, $, I, and then $36. That should do it. I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. And there we are. And there's our old friend, the pivot table field. On the left side, the pivot table itself, the output, the result, and over here on the right side, the pivot table fields. Okay. And notice how, as we've worked with this, how easy it is for me to say, okay, I think I'm going to put the sales type over here in the columns. I drag and drop it. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to look at the let's look at the channel ID. Okay, and then I am going to look at we've got the line price, and there we are. Now, if I want a different look, this is why we call it a pivot table. I can take the sales type ID, put it over here, take the channel and put it in a column very easily. Now I can do the same thing running a query, but the reason that people are gravitating to dashboards is quite simple. You can mix and match and move these things around. SAS Visual Analytics, as I've said before, is I think the best product out there, and its progenitor is Access PowerPoint. So we've seen this fact sales table, and we talked about it, and I'm going to close it off, and we won't save it. And we're going to be ready then to take a look at Chapter 17, okay? So we're going to go back over to the modules. Well, we're in the files. Let's go to the files area anyway. And you'll, of course, you're going to want to get the files for all the cases for the lunches database, the Patrick files. That's that. There's the Patrick materials and the zip code. And then we'll want to go in and look at the text for the text file for Chapter 17. So here's the Patrick materials, and I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to copy this SQL 2007. I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to call it SQL 2007, and I'm going to rename it Chapter 17. Okay. Again, this database, SQL Fun, has all of the tables that I need. I'm just going to run some queries. Okay. You've noticed we've used the same table, the same database over and over and over. That's why we're calling it. That's our database. It's our warehouse. And now we're going to go get some data using these text files from the code for Chapter 17. And we'll come in here and get that. Okay. And I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to find Chapter 17. There we go. And then we'll start to work our way through the textbook. Okay? So the authors start us off over there on page 656 with a set of Oracle code in terms of Oracle code to combine 3 tables. Well, they say several tables in a series of steps. Okay, and if you look at the bottom of page 656, it's Oracle. It's in Oracle. Okay, and notice that we start with, and they say create or replace view. So you can see that's Oracle SQL, and they're going to select. You can see right off the bat they start with two tables: the employees table, which is called table A, and the lunches table, which is B. And then notice we use a where statement to join them on employee ID, and then we also add in, we create and, so we get a list of everybody who had lunch on the 16th of November 2011. And that's at the bottom of 656. That's part A, okay? And so we've combined two tables. Now we come down to part B, and this is the bottom of 656, and notice what's going on. We're going to select, again, we're working with two tables, and those tables are SEC 1701A and the lunch items B, and then we link them up on the basis of lunch ID. Notice in this first one up here, what I call part A, we link them on the basis of employee who and on a lunch date when. Now we come down to the second part and we link them up on the basis of the lunch ID. All right. Then the third part, and this is again is at the bottom of page 656, we are using the two tables, the 1701B view and food. The 1701B view is table A, and the foods B, well, the table B is foods. And notice this time we join them using the supplier ID and the product code. All right? And then finally, if you look at the top of page 657, we've selected the employee ID, first name, last name, food quantity, and then we have a computation here where we take new price times quantity is total price from the 1701C view, and we order by the employee ID and food. So here we're using 1701C, okay? And at the bottom of page 67, we get the result set. And there it is. Okay? Now up above, on the top of page 656, you'll notice the authors tell us employee ID, first name, last name, food quantity, total price. And we're going to add 10 cents to the price when the price increases null. And we walk through that process. So here we use table A, 1701A, 1701B, 1701C, 1701D. You say, could I go all the way to Z? Yes, if I had a SEC 1701Z. And I just continued to do those linkages. Notice how we're just adding in, and look, then we have the result table, okay? Now, over on page 658, again, they use Oracle SQL. but we're going to do a little bit of modification with it. And I'll show you what we're talking about. This is the site, and down here where it says NBL, okay, we're going to replace that with NZ. NVL means no nulls. And then we're going to come down and sold price. And here and as they tell us, we enclose the date in pound signs. So we come down here for this date. And so we'll put the date in. When we hard code or use a literal, as you remember we talked about at the start of the course, as a date, we put them in. We put that in put them in pound signs. Okay. And so now we've got it ready to run. This will be 17.2. And so we've done the necessary modifications. And the book talks about them as they tell you what you need to do. There at the authors tell us there at 658. For access, change the NV1 or L function to an NZ function and close the date in pound signs. So we're ready to run this. We'll click Control. Okay. And then we're going to open up the SQL fund. Okay, and we're going to enable the content. And we'll click Create. And we're going to do Query Design as usual. We'll take it to the SQL level. Boom. And then we run it. Missing your broken link, but well, there we are. And we've got this is the same result set we get from over on page 657. The only difference is we haven't capitalized the first and last name, food, and all that business. Now, so we're going to call this 17.2. Okay. And let's go down to the design view for a moment and notice you remember when you took 1123 with me. We went through and we ran queries and we looked at the design view where we see the tables that are involved, okay? And then we also see our choices in terms of fields and anything we're going to do with them. And I'm thinking if we want to, we could, on those tables, well, we could go in and do a little bit of work so that we get the nice all caps that they use there. Okay. So out of those tables, and here we used table A, table D, table C, and then table B. So we used all four tables. This is the code over there in 658. Now I'm ready if I want, and unless I'm working in a pure dashboard product, say like a SAS Visual Analytics or whatever you may be using, or if you don't have that, you're going to be back to take in the data and you'll throw this into Excel and you'll start to do some work with it. And then you'll do some visualization with that. You do a pivot chart, do some pivot table, then do a pivot chart, okay? Or you could just take the data and do some charting with it. It's going to depend upon what the question is. Now, page 659 in the textbook, and we've got that jewel going. Now let's open that up. Page 659 takes us to 17.3, okay? Now, there is a little bit of modification we're going to be doing with that, and that is anytime we find the NVL or the NVL from D price, and that's going to be plus. I'll take that. And then we'll put the NZ function in there. And we need to work with the date. We'll take that literal and we'll put it in, use pound signs is the convention in Access. And we're ready to go. And again, we're using all four tables. We're using table A, there's table D, there's table C. We also use table B. We perform an operation, price increase, and use a column alias. And we join them on the basis of the lunch date, and we order them by employee ID and description. So we're ready to run this. This will be 17.3. You notice we've got 4 tables. Now I can tell you that in the olden days, when I first started working with computers, or learning computer languages, and working with databases, what we're slapping in here so easily would be hundreds of lines of code, hundreds of lines, put into a card that was run through a Hollerith card. You probably learned about that in 1103. Just a tremendous amount of work. Now I've got maybe 1/10 the code I would have to use, and I've got it here, and I'm ready to run the query. We'll run it, and there we are. Now again, this is 17.3, and again, let's save this. Remember when we talked about the Cartesian join, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 dimension columns here. Employee ID, first name, last name, the food. Then we move to fact, and this is why this is a facts table of fact. We've run a query on a fact table because we're getting quantity and total price. So I can figure what's the average price. What's the average price for? Well, I know the average price for each item. Okay, but if I want to know, well, what's the average quantity for all items, or what's the average price for what's the average total price? Okay. And we've combined those 4 tables. Now this is just a very, very, very simplistic example, but imagine what I can get if I use a pivot table, what I can get if I have 10,000 tables or 1,000 tables or 20,000 or even 150 tables, the kind of extraction. And then now I'm ready to do something with this data and to visualize it, okay? And so this is 17.3. And I don't know how many records I have, but I have, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4, 6 columns, and times how many ever, and then times the number of records gives me the start in terms of the total number of data that I work with. And again, it's the law of large numbers. And I look for patterns. You say you keep saying about patterns. Okay, let's walk. I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to take this table 3, right? And first I'm going to close it. Right, and I'm going to go down and find the queries. I can do a little quick search here. I'll just do queries. And there's 17.1 and 17.2. I'm going to do 17.2. And I'm going to export this to Excel. And I'm going to browse and tell it where I want to put it. I want it on my desktop. And I'm going to save it. I click OK, and it's going to be there on my desktop. Now I'm going to diminish this down for a moment, and I'm going to find that table. Here it is, 17.2. I'm going to open it up. As you've taken these courses with us, I think especially when you've taken the business problem analysis course and then you take the data admin, I think it should slowly start to sink in on you on what we're doing. We're showing you how to collect and organize data, then how to extract it and do computations on it, and then visualize it. So we've got this query here. We've got this query export. And now I'm ready to do some visualization. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this band up here so it's clear. I'll put a little fill up there. Okay. Nice business-like fill. And I'll bold them up. And then I'm going to start here at at row F2, which is total price. And I'm going to scroll all the way down here. And then I'm going to use conditional formatting. Okay. And I'm going to highlight the cell, okay, where it's greater than 2. So I can see right off the bat any of my products that are greater than $2. I can make that 3. And it will show me those that are greater than 2. Okay, so I've done a little visualization here. I could compute the standard deviation for that if I want to do that, the average. Okay, But I just want to see how many people, how many times Susan Brown made purchases, okay? And that's pretty easy to do. I'll go ahead and get rid of the conditional formatting. And I'm just going to go ahead and take it this whole export. And as you guess it, I'm going to apply filters. And I'm going to take and give this just, I want just 201. And there it is. Now, if I have 50,000 of these, that becomes a different matter. I'd want to run a count function. So one will probably run for me, but I see Susan Brown's purchases, and I can look at everybody else that way. Okay? So, as you can see, we're blowing along here and starting to see how this law of large numbers work. And it's the combinations of the dimensions that become important where we look for patterns. Okay? I'll go back here for a minute. I'm going to show you an example of what I'm talking about. We're going to clear the filters. And I'm going to start with total price. And I'm going to find those that are greater than or equal to total price that's greater than or equal to 3. Okay. And I'm going to do another search. And I'm interested in just sandwiches. So I'm eliminating dessert. I'm eliminating the grilled steak. I have just hamburgers and sandwiches. And soup of the day snuck in there on me somehow. All I did is scroll down far enough. So let's get rid of soda and soup of the day. Okay. So you can see what I'm talking about. And using and creating and using a production table. Now, 17.4 talks about being careful with inner joins. Okay. As they warn you, they talk about losing information. And unless there's a matching rule in every other table, you're going to lose some of the data. And they also tell you be careful about doing left and right outer joins. And the full outer join, as they say, preserves all of the information. And remember, you pay for it, so you want to keep it. So they talk about how to use a full join to get that accomplished. Now, if you take a look over on page 662, you're going to see that Oracle handles this fairly well. Access, it's a different story. You have a step 1, okay, on access. And let's just go ahead and open this back up and go in here and take a look. This is going to be 1707. (17-7). And we're going to select and the bottom of page 662, and I'm doing the left outer join. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into the database. But we're not through. Because we've got to select the lunch ID, employee ID. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to come in here and look for the union select. I'm going to have to code that in. Now, at the top of page 663, and I'm going to put union. Remember, a union gets everything. Wait a minute. Union will eliminate duplicates. And then I go through this second bit of code up here. I'll go back up here. And I'm going to select. I'm doing a little bit of work here for this. We're doing a little bit of improv. And right under the union, I'm going to put this. And this time I have a step one they're having us do the I'm going to do a left join in the first one. Join. And this will be this next one will be a right outer join. This is the top of page 663. And here we'll put in our semicolon. Okay, so I think we're ready, and we'll run it. Okay, and you can see we've got a bit of work here to do with this in terms of the date entered. And I'm going to move this back just a hair so I can get those date entered for you. A little bit more, I think. There we go. And there's our results set. What we did is the bottom page 662. Here's what I did. I used the code and I put in a left outer join. Okay, we're using the employee ID. And then I did a union, then I put in a union, and we did the second selection, and we did a right outer join. The tables involved here was the employees table, which is table A, and the lunches table, which is table B. And they tell us they want us to save this query. Okay, so we're going to do that. Right. And I'm going to save it as 1707A underscore view. Okay. Now, the second step, they'll have us, we'll find this. And we're going to do step 2. And we'll have those two, and we'll create that view where we do a left outer join, and we're going to do another right outer join. And we'll do another union here this code's not in the book, so we're kind of having to improvise. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to create a new query. Okay. And I'm going to go to the SQL view. And start with the first part. Of course, we'll get rid of that. Then we're going to do a union. Now the union, you run the risk of losing some data, and they tell you not to try to avoid it, because the union will get rid of duplicates. And they know about using full outer joins. And under the union, we're going to have that same the department name, and this time it will be this will be a left outer join. And then the second one will be a right outer join. Not right, but right. Now, again, a left outer join gets everything where everything in the parent, the left-hand side, that data, that table, we get everything from it, and then anything that matches between it and the child or the other table. Then when we do the right outer join, it's just the opposite. So we're getting, and we're doing a union on those, and we get all that data. So we're going to put this, let's run it and see what we get. What did they told us to say? That I think I had one query, and I had saved it as, I think I saved it as 1707A view, but I didn't. I called it. And we'll go up here and look for a moment. I'm going to close this off. And this 1701A, I'm going to rename it as 1707A, not 1. A underscore view. And notice the union sign is there. So I think we're ready now. And let's see if we get a data set on this. I still have some renaming to do. It should be SEC 1707A underscore view. And now I'm hopefully ready. Let's see. So we'll go up to the datasheet view, and there we are. And we would want to save this query as 1707B underscore view. Okay, and we're back with that saying that we're, and now we have, here's what we have. The additional information is we have the department, we have the date entered and the department. And if you look at the A view has, the B view has, well, we've got it open here, okay? And we got everything. And then A, let's look at it. And there is no department data there. So we could do a third process where we add, say, a 1707C, and we add in another field or set of fields. Okay? And either one of these now you could see, particularly 1707B, I've got some data that I can really work with now. The remainder of chapter 17 talks about the use of indexes. I've talked about that. Monitoring queries, using tables to save summarized data, using indexes, standardizing the way that tables are joined. And then over on pages 668, 669, and 670, they end up several queries that you could run using unions. At the bottom of page 670, in section 1715, is a very important blurb where they talk about ad hoc reporting. Okay? And this is where the authors talk about the fact that sometimes we ask a database to provide data that it's not designed to do. They talk about things like a change in currency rates or things of that nature. And these ad hoc reporting, they use the term creative. Sometimes you get crazy ones. Someone comes in and says, tell me how many redheaded people bought a Jeep Wrangler this year. Why would you want to know unless it was a trivia question of some kind in a game? But otherwise, it's ridiculous. So that's why you have to have query discipline. Okay, and that's, as I recall, I talked about that Anscombe's quartet, where in that article back in 1974, he cautioned everybody that our ability to capture, process, and produce data is far outstripping our ability to produce information and far outstripping our ability to understand what we're seeing. So we have to engage in the pattern recognition. Okay? And they've got a whole series of these queries, 17, 14. He gives you some Oracle. Then he walks through Access where you go through step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you go out to work, luckily, you'll be using products that will allow you to do that on a very intuitive basis. And that's why I wanted to show you the pivot table, because it does indeed mimic that information, it mimics the analytic cube. And just so I could show you, I'm going to really play around with this for a minute. And I'm going to get rid of it on the sort and filters. I'm going to clear those filters. All right. And instead, I'm going to insert a pivot table. So I'm start from A1 to F27. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to click Insert, Pivot Table. And my table range is going to be, well, I'm not going to go through all the trouble. I'm just going to capture it because I don't have that many cases. So I'm going to be lazy. Now I'll just go ahead and put them in here. And that would be A1. And we're going to use the $F and the $27. And hopefully that will do it for us. I'll put it in a new worksheet. There we are. Now let's move down here. I'm going to put, I've got last name, food, total price. I'm going to put the employee ID in the filter. I'm going to put last name in the rows. I'm going to put the food in the row. And I'm also going to put food in the column. Well, no, I'll take that off. I'm going to leave the food in, and I'll put the food in the rows. I'll move the last name over to the column. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And I'm going to put quantity here in the values. And I'm going to put total price. So it looks like here in the columns. I'll move total price up top. And it makes a little sense like that, so I'll throw it over here. And I can take the last name, and I'm going to throw it back over here under food. I'll put it on top of food. That makes more sense. And I'll take the first name. Okay, which is nonsensical. I don't really need that. But you can see I can mix and match these quite easily. Well, you'll want to save this as chapter 17.2, and you can upload it. There's also an LD 17 over there, and upload it for the workshop credit, or you could upload the one we did in the ground-based session tonight. But this is part 2. That was lunches database 16. So this is 17. So I'm going to close this off. Yeah. And for the workshop, okay, let's go back over there to it. And you had lunches 7, 8, and 9 due last on Thursday. So we've worked on 17. So you'll want to come over here. We got 13, 14, 15. And then we did 16 Thursday night. Here's 17. And notice I have a 16A and a 17. And then we have a lunches database 18. And you can upload these. I'll probably go through them just to show them. Okay? Well, I think we're ready to come to a point where we go ahead and end the meeting and stop the recording, and I'll post this over there. Stop the recording.